Well, hello, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm really excited to be here today.
It's a pleasure. The reason I wanted to talk to you is because I'm fascinated by the Anunnaki. And I know a lot of people out there probably don't know that much about who they are, what they were, where they were from. And you studied them in detail to help you put together your second book. So I just wondered if you wanted to share with us your thoughts and your findings on them.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Anunnaki are us, really, is sort of what I feel. When you look at how the Anunnaki lived and the different laws that they worked to, um, they seem to be a very varied people. Um, and we seem to be there, whatever they were doing, whatever laws and structures and infrastructures they set up, we still have that today. So they sort of, I know that it says that they created us. My personal feeling is that they created a bloodline that was Adam and Eve were black. This then became the black people. We know from the Tartaria exploration that the black people were the first people. They are also the indigenous people. I still don't quite understand how the white people fit into that. I feel possibly the Anunnaki were white. We know that they were 8 foot tall. They came from the sky, came from a different planet, and came to Earth. The time periods are given, they're quite different, really, because I think it just depends on, who you're talking to. I know that Zachariah Sitchin talks about them coming here 450,000 years ago. And then other people say that they came here 300,000 years ago. I personally feel that they've been coming here for hundreds and thousands of years, a million years, 1,005, 1,500,000 thousand years, a really long time. And I think that they were mining here. They were this planet. They were doing a variety of things on this planet. I mean, we can see evidence of gold mines going back 160,000 years, but we've also found tools under there that go back a million years. We also have, the human species, or the Homo line, going back 2 million years ago. So Homo erectus is around sort of like, 1.9 million, 2 million years ago. And no one really quite knows where humans, came from. We know that we're
Mm.
not evolved apes. And there's no evidence to show that we are evolved apes. We literally just appeared. And if anything, we could be genetically altered from an ape, because, there's certainly enough genetic alteration to show that there's something in there. Or we could actually have come from somewhere else ourselves. Whatever that may be. But the Sumerian tablets, they talk about this creation of humans. I think that they actually took a human and genetically altered that human. And where that human came from, we could say Neanderthal, Homo erectus. As I talk about in my second book, that Neanderthal, Homo erectus, they were the same as us. They were not ape-like beings at all. They were the same as us. So at some point, possibly the Anunnaki genetically altered us, created us as a servant race for them, if you like,
Yeah.
or however we look at this. I don't think that they were all bad. I know that it's often talked about that Enki was the good one, Enlil, hated humans and was always trying to kill them off, and the various different catalytic events that occurred, was Enlil trying to kill off humans at various points. And I'm not disputing that at all. But the tablets also say that the Anunnaki left around 3,100 BC, that the gods left and the management of the earth was given back to humans. And And there are other camps as well that talk about that it's actually not the Anunnaki, but it's the Elohim, not the
Yes.
Elohim, not the Elohim, but the Elohim. And these are a relation of the Anunnaki. They were white-skinned, blonde-haired, and they came here apparently 1.5 million years ago and started to mine the planet and do genetic alterations on the people who were living on that planet at the time. And we can see in our DNA and our genome that there's just sort of, so many alterations or genes that have adapted, but not adapted through evolution, literally just been altered,
Yes.
and nobody really quite knows what that is. And of course, the Sumerian tablets, the Bible even talks about these people, how they genetically altered us, or they created us, and we are the product of the people that the Anunnaki, the Elohim or the Elohim created. And I think, as much as I don't want to believe that and don't like to believe it, I think that there is a lot of evidence to show that that could be the case. But I don't think that we are just one bloodline. I really think that we are many bloodlines, and we actually come from many, many different places. And I suspect that during Atlantis, we were living here all together. And I feel that when I look at the Tartarian architecture, I feel that it's very Atlantean. It's very Lemurian, Atlantean. It feels like this. And so there's a part of me that feels like, well, that was Atlantis. That was Lemuria. And it wasn't sort of all destroyed through a flood, Maybe one continent was, or, if Atlantis was maybe on the west side of Morocco, which is many people are saying now, because they found these 3 rings.
Yeah.
And, if so, then it means that Atlantis itself, the 3-ringed city, was destroyed, possibly from the looks of it, through some sort of direct energy weapon. And when we're looking at the biblical records, the Sumerian tablets, the thing that really jumps out at me is how much fighting and warring was going on between these different Anunnaki family members. The Anunnaki were this huge family, and they may have came here originally with Anu, who's sort of the head of it all, and then Enki and Enlil, the two sons. But there are 7 of these Anunnaki family members who are very prominent, and only 2 of them are women. And these are the 7 Sumerian gods, but it's also Babylonian, Akkadian, they're all sort of the same. And I know that in the past, we believe that they were just sort of spiritual beings that weren't really real. And I think now many more of us are beginning to understand, well, they were real, and they created this planet. They terraformed it, I believe, talking about separating the waters from the waters. And Enki in particular, he created all this fauna and flora. He turned Earth into a paradise, which they named Eden. And, we can see this all over the world, can't we? Looking at Michelle Gibson's work when she's studying all the waterfalls, and she puts them all together, and she's sort of proving that they're all actually, they've been designed, and possibly all part of an energy system, a waterway system, a way to produce energy. We look at the star forts as well as a way to produce energy with the ley lines of the land. Someone very advanced, or a civilization very advanced, must have built this. And maybe it was the Anunnaki, as it talks about in these biblical records. It says that this is what these people did. They terraformed the planet, and they created everything that we have around us today.
So you said earlier on that you believe that they are responsible for the bloodlines. They left custodians, if you like, in charge when they left. Who do you think that these people are what we refer to as the 13 bloodlines when we start talking about certain families?
Yeah, maybe. I think that that Marduk was he sort of I think he appointed himself, the leader, or he was
Yes.
appointed the leader. And I know you talk about this in your books as well, that he became, I mean, he, as you know, he was the leader of Egypt, and but he sort of took on this role of wanting to be the king of everything,
Yes.
and I feel that, and I quite like what you say about this, that he was the one that then gave Egypt, or gave the planet to everyone, and to certain bloodlines. So certain bloodlines, and said, right, you're going to be the custodians, you're going to have this. And I do think that that makes sense, because we can see that they're still fighting today. Even between the 13 Illuminati families, they're still in fighting. The behavior is exactly the same as the Anunnaki behavior that is described in the tablets, in the biblical accounts in Genesis. It's like either the Anunnaki haven't gone, or we are just exactly the same as the Anunnaki, because our behavior has not changed since then. And I feel that, yes, these 13 Illuminati families are probably very prominent, like they were very prominent families within when the earth was being run still by the children of Enki and Enlil, Marduk, and there's the other one, Enlil's son. I always forget his name, begins with N, doesn't it? But so Ninurta or something like that. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So they the either it is their offspring, and I think, for me, I know that we know that the Anunnaki didn't interbreed, but we can see with these bloodlines that they keep their bloodlines very pure, and they sort of don't interbreed with the humans, if that makes sense. So I think that, in a sense, tells us that there are two different specific bloodlines here. And we know that the original humans, the Adam and Eve line, were all black-skinned. And we also know that these were the sort of the original inhabitants of the Tartarian civilization. So I can see that this is the sort of the Adam and Eve line. And then we have the 13 Illuminati families. And I sort of feel like this possibly is if you like, the offspring of the Anunnaki who interbred with humans. And we know that
Yes.
Marduk had a human wife. And apparently he loved her very much, so
I thought Enki did at one point mate with a human, or what we would consider to be a human.
well, I mean, if the records are correct, Enki, I think, mated with lots of different people.
Mm.
I mean, he was I don't know if that's correct or not, or if that's just sort of
Because
someone
he,
writing the tablets to make him look like a bad guy in it, which
yeah,
also could be possible. I know that Sitchin talks about this, but I don't really like Sitchin's books.
no,
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's like he just makes them all out to be, you know, terrible. And I don't know, maybe they were all terrible. I don't feel that they were all terrible. I think the Anunnaki were very varied. I mean, there were some of the Anunnaki were vegans. Not all of them ate meat.
mm,
They were very varied in themselves. From my understanding, they had about 10 different species within their own Anunnaki group. And Enlil and Enki, because they had different mothers, Enlil was more reptilian because his mother was reptilian, and Enki, his mother was human, or something like this. So within the two brothers, there was quite a big difference in how they would look and what their personality would be like.
so is it possible then that we hear David Icke perhaps was the first person to really talk about, certain people are reptilian. Is that possible then that they are a descendant, they're a bloodline from Enlil?
Yes, I suspect that they are. And this is the Elohim as well. So not the
Mhm.
Elohim, but the Elohim. The Elohim are an offshoot of the Anunnaki, and they are human looking. but they have that reptilian genetics within them. And because of that, they lack compassion, they lack empathy. So it's to do with the reptilian part of the brain. And you know, I feel that sort of white skin, blonde hair, maybe not even, maybe not even the hair, but the white skin, I feel it comes from that reptilian line, because they have the reptilian humanoids, they have that sort of white gray sort of skin.
Yeah.
And you can see this, with the Japanese. They talk about how they descended from a mating between a human and a serpent, a goddess who is a shapeshifter. The reptilians are always talked about as being shapeshifters. And you can just see this link everywhere. And I know that serpents are talked about a lot, in every single culture they're talked about. And I know that, I think there's an aspect of that where it's spiritual. The serpent is the spiritual, because it's, the serpent coiling, the DNA coiling. So not all of it, I think, is to do with reptilian, but it's talked about in so many different texts. I mean, the Indian Vedas talk about how humans and the serpent, the Nagas, used to live together. They used to marry, interbreed. And it's sort of showing me that, well, unless this was interbreeding through genetic engineering, which could well be, I think that's how we've interbred with the Greys, to be honest. I think it's showing that there is some sort of element of the similar genetics to be able to breed in that way. For example, the Neanderthal, we had fertility issues with the Neanderthal. So it shows that although there's a link, it's more like a cousin, than a sister species.
Yeah.
And this human DNA has been discovered to go back 9 billion years, which not only takes us off this planet, if this planet is really 4.5 billion years old, but it also takes us off to other realms, other planets, other worlds as well. And it's showing that this human DNA, it's actually tracking through many different species, I think. And it's the humanoid. The Indian Vedas talk about 400,000 humanoid species just live in this galaxy alone. And that's not even other galaxies. And that's all, they've all got this common denominator, the human DNA, but they're different manifestations of that.
Yeah. So do you think then that there has been an intervention by lots of different races of beings? And that is perhaps why we all look different. There are so many, if you look at one thing I was going to ask you about is giants and pygmies. You've got two total contrast there. So could this be that the pygmies descend from one intervention with a different being, and the giants that we believe roamed the earth is another race entirely, but they still both carry that element of human DNA within them?
Yes, I mean, that's I do think that possibly that island syndrome thing does actually, I do believe in evolution, but it's more adaptation.
Yeah.
So the human form, it will always seek to thrive, and to survive and thrive. So we can see adaptation comes up in every single, plant, animal, humans. It's there. It's evidence for all of us. But nothing has ever become a new species. So for a new species to just happen like that, yeah, I think either it would have to have come here. There's also wave genetics as well, which is and also panspermia, which is showing that we actually pick up the DNA from nearby planets, and they do from us as well. So I think there's some sort of like cross-pollination between planets as well. And we're very close to Ceres, I think, is the closest one that we have, and I think now they're beginning to discover that some planets actually have these, they call it exoplanets or something, where they're emitting the blue light in the same way that planet Earth is. Yeah. So I think there's an element of that. So the pygmies, maybe they just evolved in that way because they were living on an island. Or maybe, yes, they came from a different species. I also feel that there are many species that have come from under the earth as well.
Is this
So,
Agartha, as we often
yes,
refer to it? Yeah.
yeah. And I also think that there are reptilian species down there too. It's starting to pour with rain. Let me just move back a
Oh,
little bit.
crikey. Are you okay there?
Yeah, it's fine. Just my laptop, I just realized it's getting wet.
Good old English weather, hey?
I know. So I'm trying to get the internet connected. Okay, that should be okay. So yes, I'm now in the hedge, literally.
God, it's strange, isn't it? We had such incredible weather, and then they were out again in their planes over the last few days, and I thought, well, here we go. And I meant to cut the grass yesterday, and now I wish I had, because there's no chance of doing it today, not with an electric lawnmower anyway.
No, no.
You're okay there?
Yeah, my laptop's had a nice clean, which is good. Okay, so
So,
yeah, I think it's all different species, and I don't think all of them are off planet. I think there's many different species living under the ground, and and also sort of in the mountains, and I think that our world was multidimensional, and something came along and hijacked it, took over something. So I don't even think that this is necessarily related to the Anunnaki.
sorry, Elizabeth, when you say something came along and intervened, what's your gut feel on that? What do you think that something was?
I'm still, I mean, like everyone, I'm still researching this. I think it's linked to the Greys or the Reptilians. I can never figure out which one. As you know, I do quantum hypnosis with people, and I'm always coming across Reptilians in there. And and often the Greys seem to be behind the Reptilians as well.
So
It's
are they
really
two
hard that
races that worked together, the Greys and the Reptilians?
I think that it's because not all Greys and Reptilians are malevolent or aggressive. I really do think that we are all connected to source, even the races that believe that they're not. That we are all connected to the source, and we all have that divine spark, and we can all connect back to a source whenever we decide to. But I think that there are many races that don't want to, because they want to be depraved, they want to dominate, they want to control. And they love would not even come into their mind, which of course is what source energy is. And
You just
so
reminded me then of when I don't know if you remember when Prince Charles and Princess Diana, as they were, announced their engagement, and Charles was asked, "Are you in love?" And she had said, "Yes, she is," and he replied, "Whatever love means." And you could see quite clearly that he has no understanding of love. It doesn't seem to be something that he certainly didn't grow up with it, but I don't know if that's because of his upbringing or the bloodline that he was born into. And they certainly don't seem like a very loving family. I
I don't
wonder if
think that they
that's
know
whether.
how to love, but
Mm,
but then neither, I think that there are certain sort of families where marriage was never supposed to be about love. It was always a business contract.
mm,
And we can see that this goes back hundreds of years, and I suspect that he was sort of at the tail end of that, really.
yeah.
um
Well, Cleopatra was an example of that, wasn't she? Strategic marriages.
yes. And I think for Charles, he just didn't love Diana. But that's not to say that, I mean, I think that entire royal family, the entire European royal family, I think that they may have even started out benevolent at some point, to be honest. But I think something just hijacked, infiltrated. I have a feeling that it's interdimensional. And this is the archons that are talked about in the
Hmm.
Nag Hammadi texts. David Icke, as you know, talks about these a lot. The archons in the Nag Hammadi texts are talked about as being the rulers of reality, the reality of rulers. And they're talked about as hiding in the shadows and essentially preying on humans. And they use our physical body because they don't have one. And I think that this is something else. And I think this happened at the same time. So the regressive species, I think that they started to come here, but I also think that maybe a portal was opened, maybe because the planet was so low dimensional that we then got linked to lower 4D, which is the astral. So 4D links into like lower and higher, and the lower beings, you know, they're none of them have got bodies. They're all, you know, just sort of feeding off physical bodies. And I think that they've been feeding off us, you know, for possibly 400 or 500 years. I think that they're linked to the Vatican in some way, but I do feel reptilian energy and gray energy with the Vatican, definitely. I also think that John Dee did something. The because he was dabbling around with these, he found these ancient texts, and he was dabbling around, and he used them to call in the demons to try and give Elizabeth I more power, because I think it was when there was some sort of war going on. And I don't think he really understood what he was playing around with. And I think he brought something in them. So I think it's coming from many different sources. And, you know, whether it's related to the Anunnaki and the Anunnaki having that reptilian bloodline, who knows? It could be. Some part of me thinks that maybe it's just easier to hijack something that's your own bloodline, you know?
So where do you think they went? What happened? Where did Enki and Enlil, just as two examples? They're
I think
here.
they left.
So where do you think, did they go back to Nibiru, or as NASA calls it, Planet X? Where do you think?
Maybe. I also think there's an element of them being space explorers as well. So maybe they just went off to explore and find other places. They've been here for a very long time. I think, you know, they probably got fed up with their creation, or, you know, at least, you know, whatever I mean.
Yeah, I've read that they got they found that I read that at one point we were actually eating each other, and they couldn't believe what their creation was doing. But they had the Agigi first, didn't they, that they brought with them to mine. So do you think that they had mined all they needed to and then left, but put these custodians in place?
Yeah, possibly it's that as well. I mean, I know if I was on a planet for, like, you know, 300,000 years, I'd probably want to go and explore somewhere else. And, you know, I do think that they possibly were, or, you know, or still are space explorers on some level, because I think you only have to look at us to understand who and what the Anunnaki were. You know, we love exploring, you know, we love finding new things, and, you know, whatever we are, I think they were, because it's all in our DNA. It's epigenetic memories which are tracing back. And at the moment, I think epigenetic memories are waking up for so many people. And that's why I think so many people are beginning to wake up to the fact that they also came from a different planet. I think there are so many different species here, not just the Anunnaki, but of course the Anunnaki themselves were a mix of 10, 11, 12 different species.
So why do you think whenever we see them portrayed that they have this bluey kind of glow to them, this blue skin? If you think that they
maybe
were
their blood,
Caucasian, right?
because the copper-based blood is blue. They definitely were different to us. I mean, I even, you know, suspect that maybe the Rh negative is their blood as well. But
yeah, it's funny you say that, because I was going to ask you about that. My when I first met my mother-in-law, and this is you know, this is 30 years ago, it came up in the conversation about, we were talking about Mongolian blue spots, because we were talking about having children, and my mother-in-law said that when Farina was born and her brother Adam, they had this Mongolian blue spot, and she said that it was because Farina's father's Indian and my mother-in-law's English, Caucasian, and that by mixing races, there often is this Mongolian blue spot. It's normally sort of low, right at the bottom base of the spine, around that sort of area, and it's not there for very long. It disappears after a short period of time. And I said, so is this because certain blood groups can't mix? And she said, well, I don't know, but I'm Rh negative, so I have Atlantean blood. Now, this is someone who is not a conspiracy theorist. She wouldn't know who David Icke was if he walked past her. She'd never heard of Stephen Hawking, even. This is just a regular person that is going around telling people that she has Atlantean blood because she's Rh negative. And I did a bit of a dive into that and started discovering that actually Rh null is a blood group that we don't talk about very often or hear. And I wonder what your well, first of all, what are your thoughts on Rh negative? Do you think that that's Atlantean? Because I believe that Tartaria was merely an echo of Atlantis, that they were keeping it going, or reintroduced that style of building and that ethos and working with frequency. But so could it possibly be that the Tartarians were Rh negative as well? And this goes back through Atlantis to perhaps a more direct bloodline to the Anunnaki. And where does Rh null come into all this? Because I think there's only 43 people with that apparently across the
golden
world.
blood. Yeah, the golden blood. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with the Rh negative. So again, this is what I'm discovering from my own research. But as you know, none of us know whether we have the right answer or not. It's just, we're just researching. So these are just my own thoughts about it. But because I also do a lot of meditation and channeling to try and find inner wisdom, because a lot of the outer wisdom or the outer, knowledge has gone. We don't have it anymore. I think our texts have all been altered as well, especially the Bible. It's been altered hundreds of times over 2,500 years, so it's just not sort of proper information anymore. So I tend to sort of go inside and just find my own wisdom and what works for me and what resonates with me. And I feel, yes, the Rh negative, I do think that it's the Atlantean bloodline. I know Marco Vitago, I think he is. He talks about the haplo X gene being the Atlantean gene, not the Rh negative in itself, but the Rh negative is part of that because it's very predominant in the Basque and the areas around the Atlantic where Atlantis was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So he feels there's that sort of that link in there, and I can see what he means with that, definitely. I feel that Atlantis, it ran for hundreds and thousands of years, The Mayans, they talk about the different worlds. And when they talk about the second, like the last world, yes, was like 10,000 years ago, which coincides with the global flood. The world before that, the world before that ran for more than 2 million years. And that was Atlantis, I think, and Lemuria as well. And I think it's, again, because it was a split in different types of personalities or consciousness or whatever. Lemuria, I feel, was a lot more spiritual. Atlantis was a lot more technology-based.
Technical, yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I think AI is an Atlantean technology. And it's being brought back now, or it's coming back, or it's always been here, because maybe it's etheric energy in some way, which we're now, they're now reintroducing as new stuff, but none of this is new. It either all comes from Atlantis or it's always been here, and I can't quite figure out which one yet. But Lemuria was different. It was much more spiritual. It was very spiritually advanced, and it's a very different energy. So so that Rh negative, I do think the golden blood, this is something that is actually very recent. It's very new. And for me, and I talk about this in my second book, for me, I feel that this is a sign that different species are incarnating through the physical bodies. So if you like, it's what we call star seeds, or souls from other dimensions, other universes are coming in, either to help this planet help raise the consciousness of this planet so that we can move, back to 5D or to a higher vibration, which I believe that we were before when Atlantis, Lemuria was around. 5D it's multiple dimensions. I think that our myths and legends, it's all pointing to the fact that it was a multidimensional planet. It was not just one dimensional like we have now. So the golden blood for me is a sign that different souls are incarnating, because DNA, it has an energetic aspect of it as well. It's not even physical actually, but it has an energetic aspect which we can't necessarily see. And it wherever the soul has been, it acts as a blueprint, if you like, and it creates that physical manifestation, which is the person. And so what I've been noticing is that children are really, really changing. Not only are they coming in so much taller, really so much taller,
yeah,
but they're coming in so different. And it's what we call neurodiverse, but they're so different. They just think in a really different way. And I understand about, heavy metals on the brain and everything with autism and Asperger's and stuff, but I can also see that this is not just this. These are different beings coming in. I really feel this.
so you think there's some sort of divine intervention taking place?
Not necessarily
Divine might be the wrong word, but there's an intervention.
Yeah, either our planet has now opened back up and souls from other parts of the multiverse can incarnate back in, either that, and the soul, if the soul, for example, the last place that they incarnated was the Pleiades or Arcturus or something like this, they come back in, they're bringing that energy in with them. They may not have originated from the Pleiades, but they had their last incarnation there. So they're bringing that energy back in. And they're bringing, like a higher vibrational energy. They're bringing in new ways of thinking, being. Mary Rodwell talks about in her books, where she interviews all these kids that, really young kids, like 6, 7, 8 years old, talk about how they came here from, some planet across the other side of the universe or something, and they came here to help rebuild the environment, or they used to be quantum physicists in their past life, and they've come to bring this new knowledge into this planet. Like just really like amazing things that you wouldn't think a 6-year-old would even talk about,
No.
But I know with my daughter, she talked about her past life right up until the age of 7. So
really?
I talk about this in my first book. Yeah. So I know that when kids are talking like this, they are referring to past lives. I really feel this because I had it with my daughter for 2 years. This went on. So I think that's what's changing the blood. It's changing because epigenetics is changing the DNA. Wave genetics changes the DNA. Everything changes our DNA. Just our thoughts and feelings and emotions changes our DNA. Our DNA changes multiple times during the day. There's been so many studies to show that our DNA changes based on our emotional thoughts, our words, all of this.
You've just reminded me of something, the saying that a leopard doesn't change its spots, but of course that a leopard does. The spots change constantly throughout its entire life. And I just had a flashback to that rather bizarre saying.
Yeah, the things on our palms change constantly throughout our lives, we change constantly throughout our lives. And so we're not physical. And I think this is something that, even I forget this, or because we're always doing this research, we're in a physical world. None of this is physical. We're not physical. Everything is consciousness, waves of consciousness, wave genetics, which I think really accounts for a lot of the changes that we have going on. The past 10 years alone, there's just been so many changes. Geneticists can see that our genes are changing. The kids who are coming in now, their genes are different. Their brains are different. They have no idea why. They create, disorders. They say it's a disorder, or it's whatever, it's this, it's from whatever it is. I don't think it is, I think some of these autistic kids, I look at them and I think, no, you've got you've got vaccine damage, or, you know, some
Yes.
of them, no, you've got heavy metals on the brain. But some of them, you look at them and think, no, 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 you come from somewhere else. You can just see it, you can feel it, you know. So there's all sorts going on here. And that's probably where the blood comes from, again, a different species, but not necessarily physically here, but the soul brings in the physical characteristics.
So what would you say the connection is, not between the architecture, but between the people that lived in Atlantis, the Atlanteans and the Tartarians? Are we talking about the same people?
Yeah, I think that Tartaria was an extension of Atlantis. Um, you know, maybe even Atlantis hasn't gone. Maybe it was in a different dimension, or it is in a different dimension, you know? Maybe Lemuria again hasn't gone. Maybe what came in has hacked all of our minds, and not only hacked us and trapped us into 3D, but also stopped us from accessing the multiple, you know, the multi dimensions of our own brain, of our own body, and of our world around us.
There are
So,
also, sorry, I was just going to say there are also, of course, areas of the world we're just not allowed to see, and
yes,
flight paths that are specifically designed to avoid certain areas. And we're told that even if we jump in a boat and decide we're going to circumnavigate the Earth, that there are certain places that we can't go because they're patrolled by the military. So is it
yeah.
possible that there are continents out there that we just don't know about, that the powers that be do, but we're sort of forced to avoid them? We're never going to see them because of these flight routes and the routes and these shipping routes as well, that they're purposely trying to stop us being able to see any of this.
Yeah, I think the Earth is much bigger than we've been led to
Mm,
believe. I think there's a lot out there. And because it's talked about again in so many of these old texts, you know, there's one book which I think goes back to the 1800s or something. I've forgotten the book, but it's referenced in my second book. And he talks about how there are continents that exist and we're not able to see them. He talks about them being in another dimension. And, you know, that could easily be the case, because if we think about it, if just because something, you know, there could be other things out there that we can't see, but it's not because it's hidden behind icebergs, you know, and plantations. It's because our mind can't register
yeah,
it, our eyes can't see it,
yeah,
so
we've
it's
got quite
still
a
there in plain sight.
the our visibility, the human eye, the visibility is actually a fraction, isn't it? It's a very small percentage of what is actually around us. I think it's sort of 2 or 3%, isn't it, that the human eye can actually see.
Yeah, but the brain is even worse. The brain filters out, the eye sends more information to the brain. The brain filters out what it doesn't believe, and that's why belief structures are so fundamental. That's how programming works.
Mm,
That's how all this mind control stuff works. And that's cognitive dissonance as well. You know,
yeah.
if you don't believe it, you're not going to see it.
I think that seems to happen at school, doesn't it? Because I was talking about this to somebody the other day, and they said that the problem is that you have this incredible imagination as a child, and you see things under the bed and at the bottom of the garden. You may even also have an imaginary friend. And then the day you start school, your imagination is shut down, and you're told that this is how things are, that this is what the world looks like, this is what a tree looks like, this is how you draw a house, and everything becomes programmed. And I think that that's perhaps the beginning of the end for a lot of people, for their pineal gland.
Yeah, well, definitely a lot's been done to the pineal gland. Certainly the fluoride, the
Calcifying it, yeah.
yeah, but I think there's other genetic engineering that's been done as well, because I think it's Michael Tellinger that talks about how
Mm,
there's evidence to show that the eyes or the optic nerve used to be connected to the pineal gland, which shows
right.
then that our eyes were able to see, you know, they were connected to the pineal gland. So not only could they see more, and that's part of the brain. The brain has already been seen to be multidimensional. It exists in 11 dimensions. And they used to think that it was a storage system. It was a way for our brain to store information, because nobody knows where we get our memories from, because our brain is not storing it. But actually, I think it's because it's set up to experience 11 dimensions. I think it's 12 dimensions. I feel that this is 12-dimensional, that this is a 12-dimensional realm that we're in. And, there are other dimensions as well, but this is what we are. But they've only discovered 11 dimensions of, they're sort of like containers, which sort of they sort of move to change shape.
Yeah.
It's very interesting how it works, but our eyes were connected to all of that, so I just
that would
think,
explain why it's referred to as the third eye, wouldn't it? If there was actually a physical connection to it.
yeah. And reptilians still have that reptiles still have that third eye intact, which is interesting. Mammals don't, So again, it does look like some sort of genetic alteration here, but whether it was for good or for bad, who knows? But I don't know. Someone asked an interesting question the other day, saying, are we a 12-stranded species who was chopped down to 2-stranded, or are we a 2-stranded species who is now becoming 12-stranded? Because we can see that more strands of DNA are switching on, and it's an interesting one, because nobody really knows. But it depends whether we want to see ourselves as we were created by the Anunnaki. They used our blood. I think that all beings in the multiverse, the universe, are 12-stranded. I just feel this, and it's something I've read somewhere as well. And if they used our blood, then that would mean that we would have their blood, we would have the 12 strands. And in the Sumerian tablets, they talk about how they downgraded the human because they got scared that we had the same power as them. So they downgraded us. So I think it's probably that we were 12 and then we were downgraded to 2. And now with the rising energies of the planet again, we're now the DNA is switching back on, and we're spiraling back up to a 12-stranded species again, which is the same as all the other beings in the universe as well.
So this could be a positive outcome, this current kind of shift that we're going through.
Yeah.
A lot of people see we talk about the Great Reset and we see it as a scary thing, but perhaps actually there's more to it than just introducing 15-minute cities and the 5G and so on. Perhaps and I like to hope that it's actually a shift in consciousness.
I think there's definitely positive things coming in. What I've said before is I don't think that the world leaders are going to apologize about what's happened in the past. I don't think anyone's going to talk about how the planet was, infiltrated, hijacked, whatever. We can just see signs of this everywhere. And I don't think I think they're going to sort of just gloss over that and just move into the next period of benevolence, and now we're going to be rebuilding our cities, and the world's going to get much, much, much better. But whether we get these old texts coming out, I know in Tibet, they have all these old historical records. Whether this information comes out, I don't know. Maybe parts of it will, but possibly not the parts that's going to damage their reputation,
So all of your research has gone into it was your second book really that explores this. You've got a copy there, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've got it here.
And that, can they get signed copies from you, and can they, and I'm guessing it's on Amazon?
Yeah, well, I haven't done signed copies actually, because I was living in Dubai until about 2 months ago, and there's no postal service there. But yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to do signed copies. People are starting to ask me now to sign things, now that I'm here back in the UK. So I'm very happy to do that. And yeah, it's on Amazon. It's also on my website as well, because I know there are many people that don't have Amazon. Certainly when I was living in the Middle East, nobody could even buy my books there. So, but yeah, I'm more than happy to sign things like that.
So would it be an idea if I put a link down below to your, would you prefer a link to your website or one to Amazon, or should I just put both in there?
You can do link to website. Yeah, and do the link to the website and my book page. I'll send you the link, and then it's got both my books on there. And yeah, and they can buy a colored copy version, because it's got 66 images in, and I couldn't, they wouldn't do the colored version on Amazon. So I put the colored version on my website if people want to buy it with the colored copies, colored images.
I had a sort of similar situation when I brought my first book out. I couldn't get it in color, and all of the images in the center pages were black and white. And then all of a sudden, I got an email from Amazon saying that I could now have it in color, but the printing costs were a lot higher, actually 3 times the price, which was disappointing. But still, people have bought it. I was thinking the other day about Amazon and the desire over the course of our history for books to be destroyed and libraries to be destroyed, and we've had book burnings, and the push now for lots of people to want to read books digitally, through Kindle, for example, and ebooks. And I couldn't help seeing a correlation between the word Kindle and kindling for starting a fire. So you buy a book on Kindle, and is that because ultimately it's a metaphor for destroying books? Because of course the digital version can be doctored. You could put your book onto Kindle now, publish it on Kindle, and 6 months later they could have altered the text in it. You're not necessarily going to find that out yourself, and unless the person reading it has the paperback or the physical copy of your book, they won't have a comparison to know if it's been altered. And as we go through time, they can alter it continually, and authors like yourself might never actually know. And I wondered if that the fact that they've chosen the word Kindle is a metaphor.
I never thought of that. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that regardless of us moving into a positive epoch, new times and everything, I do think that there's still an element of censorship and control.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I was talking to Michelle Gibson about this, she said that she feels that the real true history will come out. That it's all under the Vatican. The Vatican is now being cleared, with the Pope dying. That they're now moving into again this benevolent thing again. They're going to be releasing all the old historical records that are there. We've got the something like 5 million Tibetan scrolls, which haven't been released because they say that nobody could translate them. But of course, now they'll probably come out and say, oh, we found someone that can translate them, and now they'll start translating. So I think a lot of history will come out, but I also think that there still will be an element of control and censorship, because some people will not want, information about, their country to come out to their citizens. I mean, it just sort of makes sense, really.
Putin's talking about announcing to the world next year, allegedly, that he's going to release all of the files on Tartaria. I don't know if you've seen that going around.
Yes, I did. Yeah, because I know he's already released information and maps, didn't he? He said that he was starting to change the curriculum for the children in Russia, that they would get their true history back. And let's see, let's see if that's the true history, or let's see if it's a slightly sort of altered or censored history.
Yeah. That was supposed to happen in America.
I don't think that there's any malevolence. Okay.
Yeah, the 1776 report was supposed to do that, but it got stopped. It was hijacked by Biden. Yeah, Trump was trying to correct people, rewrite history, and tell them the truth about how America was populated before, the pioneers arrived, and the what many believe to be the forefathers of America. He was going to give them the true history, and that was stopped by Biden's administration.
Well, okay, because this is interesting, because I know, from some of my sort of intel research, that when the Queen was she sort of stepped down, and she said she agreed to move away, and there were terms and conditions to her doing this. So she gave up all of her money, which, as we know, is going into sort of the white hats pot, and this is going to be used to sort of create humanitarian projects around the world and create, a beautiful world again. But one of the conditions that she said was that nothing bad would ever come out about her and her family, that
Right.
her reputation would remain intact. And they agreed to this in order for her to give up her wealth. So that already is censorship in there. No, maybe like 250 years time or whatever, because I don't think the royal family will be around for that much longer. Then, maybe we can searchers, we're going to have a job for life, many lives, if that's what we want. Because I think there's always going to be an element of suppression, censorship.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I lost you there for a moment. I could still hear you, but the we actually lost the visual. It went a little bit blurred.
Okay.
Before we sign off, just one question I have to ask you, and I try and ask everybody this, but sometimes I completely forget. If you could bring somebody back from the dead, from the pages of history, for 1 hour, and they would answer any question you threw at them honestly, who would you like to sit and talk to?
Oh gosh. I think Enoch.
Wow, as in the Book of Enoch.
Well, he wrote 365 books, which apparently hidden under the pyramids. I think he was also Thoth. He basically walked with the gods. He was a scribe to the gods. He wrote all these books because the gods, they gave him all this information. I don't think that all the gods were bad. I think some of them, there's regressive and there's, benevolent. And he lived. I mean, he didn't even die. He went off with the gods, to carry
Yeah.
on. He's probably still alive somewhere. So he was on this planet for 365 years or something like that. In that time, he learned so much, so much. And because he went off and then he came back again, he's also been to space, or whatever, what we call space, multidimensional reality, probably. So he understands possibly how the universe works. And this is something that's really, really fascinating for me. I really want to understand how this all works.
That's a bloody good answer. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. I really appreciate it, and I'll put the links in below if you, like you said, if you send them over, I'll put them below. But for
Okay.
now, Elisabeth, thank you so much for taking the
Okay.
time to talk to me and sharing
Thank
what you
you.
know. And obviously, anyone who wants to dig deep can get a hold of a copy of your book and enjoy the research, and perhaps they might find themselves resonating with what you've written.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Reach out. Let me know what you think. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been really great. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
And you. Bye bye for now.